Thanks everybody for sticking around. My name is Cordiero. I'm going to kind of be the host and moderator. With such a small group, feel free to ask questions as they come up in your mind. We really want you to feel that you can kind of engage in the conversation. I think I have to preface this a bit. We're best friends. We've actually been friends for almost 20 years now. Because it was 2001.
2000?
Yeah, so
We met first semester.
yeah. So sorry. We've been friends for 23 years. He was the best man at my wedding. I was the best man at his. So that will bleed through fairly quickly in this conversation. So if we go off like a shot on a topic that's super esoteric between us, we apologize. But we're trying to keep it so that you guys can kind of hear kind of the process that we talk about, especially with this particular project. For Zach, who didn't introduce himself at the beginning of the period.
I do that every single time.
So we'll leave time for questions at the end of it. But to kind of begin this, I share that time frame with you because to see Zach as the artist in this particular context is really kind of gratifying because it, from my particular perspective, is a great response to what his interests have been throughout most of his life as long as I've known him, to kind of find him being in this particular kind of medium, kind of doing this sort of process, being able to give you a visual art. I can say this because I've known him long enough. Whenever whatever creative force put us on the earth, when they made Zach, they kind of stopped and said, you're going to get a bit more than everyone else when it comes to the creation department. You're going to be much more talented, you're going to be able to hear things people can't hear, do things people can't do, and you're going to be aware of that, and basically say, like, I want to be a Renaissance man, and then have people kind of scoff at that, and then, now prove them wrong. So it's very gratifying. I don't want to kind of come off like I'm blowing terms from one of my best friends, but it's more in the sense of this has been super rad to see that creation process take place and be a part of that and then be able to talk about it. So thank you so much for joining us. I think with the entire creative process, what struck me initially when we talked about this whole project was the sort of oddly relevancy to what it means at this current time, Dada coming out of World War I, coming out of that sort of loss of meaning in the face of this grand sort of historical worldwide event, and feeling oddly relevant in the time of coming out of our current times with COVID being very similar with that massive death coming in, and that for a lot of folks that's sort of shaking with what it means to be human in the world, and that being kind of taken away in a way. For you approaching Dadaism in that kind of historical context, do you see any sort of current events or things now that you find to be in the same spirit, or do you find that there's just, this is nothing more than the sun, but I wanted to get your kind of idea of what you see kind of in current times in that sort of relationship.
I think it can be relevant to a lot of things now. I mean, it's not like there's this one global problem right now that everybody is facing, like maybe in World War I. I mean, World War I spread most of the globe, more than World War II did actually. It extended into the Middle East, it went into the Balkans, so we don't think about that. Usually we think about the Western Front, basically, right? I mean, sorry, Eastern Front. Western Front, where, most of the European countries you think of are situated, but it went across the world. So, I mean, even if we step outside of politics, COVID in its own way kind of was a global pandemic, right? It's funny that you asked that question because now that when I'm thinking about it, that's when this stuff kind of came to me for the most part. It was during COVID, which was like, just let's make something, And like I said earlier, I don't have a great steady hand or a painter's touch, so it was a great way to express things. It's very, it is aggressive. I think it looks maybe soft on the eyes, some of them, but it's a very aggressive kind of thing to do to cut all this stuff up. Because you spend time making it, and then it goes away and becomes something else, which is that if I answer your question?
We're just finding more questions, we get better questions. Is there, like in the process of actually just creating the art with the intention of knowing I'm going to cut this up later, I guess the thing I've always kind of wondered, like, you knew when it was unfinished because you ran out of pieces to put together, but I was very intrigued by the fact that you, with as much effort that you put into not preconceiving what the end goal would be, when you got there, you knew immediately that it was incomplete. How do you kind of reconcile that, especially with the sort of idea that you're doing it with the intention of getting there without that preconceived notion of where the end point is?
I think I tried to shuffle the deck so much that even if I have to shuffle it again, it still is shuffled. Maybe that's kind of how I would look at it. Like, even though I had to go and make it all over again because I fucked up, basically. It's still when you cut it up and you make everything at random, because I guess that's not really in there. I also then shuffle all the pieces and don't look at what's next. I don't think I mentioned that part. Sorry.
No.
But yeah.
Well, no, I mean, I mean, even if it's shuffled at some point,
Okay, I see.
like you can get there and be like, okay, I'm cool with this, but even then, just knowing like, oh, I wish I need more pieces, and going back and recreating the entire piece again, like the randomness you left, you made that. So.
Oh, I see what you said. Yeah, you don't know. Actually, the hardest one was the purple, gold, and teal one. I'm bad at math, and I probably could have saved myself a lot of fear and stuff if I had thought to do math. But I thought 3 big sheets of watercolor paper would do the trick. It took 5 and a half, about 5. So even then, it sucked because I had to start all over again. It takes forever just to do the watercolor, and then you gotta do the singing, and you gotta do the line, and you gotta varnish it. Yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot. So yeah, I mean, I tried to make it hard, and I didn't then go, okay, this would go good in that empty spot. Like it started the process all over again. You didn't know how to redraw it for literally what was that maybe in the picture
Like this.
Yeah, it was barely anything, but I had to do it all over again.
Is there? What does that moment feel like? I mean, getting to that place of just understanding that this is because for you, it's, you're doing this as a first attempt. You're doing this as, by your own admission, trying to do this as an experiment, and getting to that point of like, because I think for many of us, either artists or not, or hobbyists or not, there's going to be this moment of realization that I haven't made enough, or this isn't quite complete. But what does that feel like for you?
It's dreadful. I really hated it. The couple of times that happened, yeah, it was. I don't know if she remembers, but I think I didn't. I quit for a few days.
Yeah.
Quit for a while, just to kind of like build it up again, because it is a lengthy. I mean, one way you put it to me when you were learning about how I did it, you're like, you would pick the most tedious way to go about.
I'm going to do an art show. I'm going to pick something super tedious to do it and have a fun time.
Yeah.
I'm dumb.
It actually wasn't fun either. It was really stressful because you again. I think in the description over there somewhere, I talk about how. I don't think I talk about the first piece. The first piece I always just go straight in the middle. That's always the first piece. I don't really decide where that one goes. And hey guys.
It's not Chinatown with some flashing lights.
Yeah, you need that stuff. I lost my train.
Middle. With the tedious process of putting stuff together and starting there and that sort of thing.
Oh yeah, I mean, a lot of that is though just to try to make it anonymous as possible. To even painting the squares on the watercolor paper is very like non-representational. I don't know how to put it, but it's like you're not seeing what you're making yet. Like it's not until you start like pasting things down that you start to see where it might go. But that's kind of why I mentioned the jazz in there as well. As even with something like free jazz, they tend to have an idea or something. I mean, even you might debate what the first free jazz album is, but like Shaker Jazz that come out Ornette Coleman, they still had heads. If you know what a head is in music, they still played the melody at the start. They usually ended the song with the melody again, and that sort of set the tone for it. But whatever happens after the head is over playing, then anything can happen. But there's still direction to it, even though they're not sure where exactly they're going. If that makes sense.
No, and when we were coming up, Zach taught me what jazz was, by the way. I share that because it's incredibly important, because that's the impetus for the friendship that we had. I saw him listening to John Coltrane at a bus stop, and because I had no friends, I wanted to make a friend. It's a true story, I promise. And pointed and said, "You're listening to Johnny Coltrane," which immediately tipped Zach off like, "You're an idiot. No one calls him Johnny Coltrane." But it was the idea of, it's true. And best friends ever since. And the idea of modal jazz, having that sort of like, here's where the structure is going to be, and this is where we're going to run, and this is where we're going to end. But even with the idea of that free jazz and that sort of context of having other folks to process with, would being open to doing that with other artists on the entire piece interest you in that regard, about being able to approach, like, here is the head of this particular piece, this is, you know, taking.
Kind of, yeah. Like, for example, like the line one over here with the flames or whatever you want to call it. I see flames and stuff, I don't know, black and white flames. But I kind of had sort of an idea of what it might look like after it, once I cut it up and pasted it back together. It just looks like a sort of shattered version of what you began with, which kind of happens with the charcoal one on the far side over there as well. It looked more gritty. In fact, my joke for that one, I didn't title it anything, but was, this is what it felt like to do geometry for me in high school. Because that's what math feels like to me. It's just like weirdness everywhere. But that one too, like I could kind of predict ahead of what it might look like. Whereas the Kandinsky and the Mondrian, it was a little harder. I didn't quite know what it was going to be. In fact, before I did the big version, I did it on a really tiny piece of paper and just saw what would happen if I did it, just to not waste a lot of time. And it ended up looking interesting. And actually what's kind of cool about Kandinsky is that if you read the book that, you guys again don't have this one in here anymore, I think, but he talks about starting point, line, and plane is what he talks about. It's like these three basic elements can make almost any kind of art you can possibly think of. It's just those three ideas. But he has this very musical way of talking about his art, where he's kind of painting sounds in an interesting way. And I wouldn't be surprised if for like Fantasia that they're literally taking a huge cue from Kandinsky and certain parts of Fantasia with music. But it looks like jazz, I guess. It's alive. There's a lot going on in there.
The thing that always struck me about it too, when we were talking about Dadaism, specifically coming out of that time, sort of that relationship to World War I, and being very plain for everyone to understand that the absurdity of life, well, death makes all of life absurd, and having to kind of pull meaning out of that. Is there something freeing about approaching that sort of absurdity, or, we kind of talked about it a little bit about playing with the nonsense of it. Was it freeing? Did it help you kind of approach other things in your life as you were completing the project itself, or was there just that sort of process of playing with nonsense to make sense?
I wish I had spent a little time on the middle picture in the Hugo Ball slide from earlier this evening, because it's a sound poem. And so what he did was, to his best, really, Kurt Schwitter's has a really long one, if you've ever heard Ursinot, I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's about 30 minutes long, but it's a sound poem of nothing but nonsense words that when you say them or sing them or however you say it, like kind of convey a meaning. So Caruana is a really famous one from Hugo Ball, and if you have, go look them up. There's a little reenactment of Dada stuff if you go on YouTube or something. But yeah, he gives this sound poem, and it sounds like he really is trying to tell you something super damn important. and it's really like you're kind of like, whoa, where's he going with this? But it's literally nothing but nonsense sounds. And so I call Dada in some way sensical nonsense, which sounds like a complete conundrum, but it's true. One way I can convey this is I work in the field of psychology for like the couple of people who don't know me very well, maybe. And one of the interesting things that we talk about in psychology is if I say lemon, everybody's got a picture of a lemon in their head right now. If we're not going to do this, you probably wouldn't want to do it anyway. But if we were to all say lemon as loud as we can for the next 10 minutes over and over again, the word goes away. The lemon disappears from your mind. What's kind of cool about the word Dada, and I tried this on the way home job once. If you say Dada over and over and over and over again, it just gets more and more Dada. It doesn't lose its meaning, it just gets stronger. And so you asked if it was freeing. My favorite kind of philosophy is very logical and very dry kind of philosophy. So yeah, Dada was very freeing to kind of find. Not just because I got to make art finally, because I found a way to do it, but it's kind of fun to like not give a shit or like say fuck it, you know? It's like, it's kind of cool to do that. Or to take something fun and be like, nope. Or to say something nope and go, yeah. Because in a way, like, this is Dada and Dada. And when I first got into art, I pretended I'd start my own art movement called Abob, which is just the Dada. But they wanted to make shit ugly, and I kind of did the opposite approach. Maybe I wanted to see if I could take something and destroy something and make something pretty out of it. Not maybe all the collages are pretty, but I speak very much for the watercolors. There's something pleasant about them, even though it's literally just shit cut together and pasted on. Yeah.
It's like Cecil Taylor talked about why everyone liked John Coltrane was because his tone was pleasant.
Yeah, it is. Miles Davis thought it was his tooth.
What?
So John Coltrane's missing a tooth over everything, and he was going to get it filled. And Miles Davis told him not to do it. He thought it would affect his tone. And I think Coltrane listened to him.
Sorry, that's just the stuff we're talking about. I think the other thing that I was struck by kind of approaching it is that Dada's relationship to art is, one, going to be antagonistic, but two, needs the preceding art to quite literally exist. My favorite thing about punk rock was that it gave everyone permission to play, and that's also my least favorite thing about punk rock because it gave everyone permission to play. But it was only in relationship to what was actually going on. And you know,
there actually is a lot of skill in what they did, though. That's the funny thing about Dada, is they might try to pretend like they're like not really that artistically inclined, but they were. Like if you look at like Raoul Hausmann has watercolor mixed with photo montage, and yeah, not just anybody could have put those things together that way. Or Hannah Holt is really famous for photo montage, and she's brilliant. But yeah, I mean, she knows what she's doing. She knows how to. She worked at a printing press or something like that, so she knew like that's a great eyeball, that's a great arm, that's a cool crutch. I'll put that on the dude with the baby head, you know.
Is that what limited Dada? Is the fact that it ran out of, or it just became?
Yes.
Okay.
That's kind of like the sort of accepted idea of why it ended. They all have their stories about who invented the word, and I guess the story most people stand with is one night Hugo Ball and Richard Wilsonbeck were together in a room trying to think of a name for this art stuff they were doing, and they stuck. So the story goes, they lied a lot. They stuck a letter opener into a random French-German dictionary, opened it up, and the knife pointed at the word dog, which is French for hobby horse. But it means lots of other things too. I forget what some of the other things are. For example, Abob, even me like teasing it and kind of twisting the word around, I looked it up. I made up all kinds of interesting jokes. It's funny, if you look for nonsense, you will mine it, I promise. Like if you look for it, you will mine it. Because Abob ends up meaning a bunch of stuff too. It's actually a form of music and jazz, ABAB, type of poetry. It's a type of experimental study, AB studies. And boom, all of this stuff just from a nonsense word. So, sensible nonsense, and yes, that's free for me as a person. It helped me to not have to feel like I had to go to art school to know how to draw. Like you can make art out of anything. It's the intention that matters for me. Is what were you trying to do with it? I guess.
It's a bit leading, I think, in that particular regard, because a part of me wonders if, sound awful, but did Dada just precede the technological approach to AI art? In the sense that if Dada doesn't have a reference point, it can't exist because it needs that art, and it needs, even with the Kandinsky piece, you're quite literally just using existing art in order to create new art. And that sort of relationship struck me in the sense of, one, Dada being able to have that relationship, but two, it needed those information points to reference and then kind of reject and bring out. is there, and even just the idea of removal of authorship, having that style being almost co-opted because that's how this digital kind of manifestation of it appears, so much so that even if your human style is AI looking, people just assume it's AI art. Is there a bit of that, do you think that Dadaism would approach AI art as sort of that removal, or would they kind of reject it because of its tools? Or
That's a good question. Dada in many ways like how typography and how things were printed. Tristan's art, my favorite, God, you've heard me say his name a bunch of times. He learned how to use printing presses just to make things happen for himself. So when they think about computer art, I don't know. I think they would have probably just utilized it in some way. They probably would have figured out some way. They loved, I mean, that's why they did the types of posters they did, the publications they did. They were trying to co-opt how people made newspapers and propaganda and things like that and take it for themselves and make art out of it. So it's a very, it's a bad word in America a lot of time, but manifesto. Their manifestos, Dada manifestos are fucking amazing. They're revolver shots to the head is how Tristan's art refers to them. Like they're really fun. If you want to feel angry for a while and have fun feeling angry, read a Tristan's art manifesto. But it was they were just trying to, and in many ways Dada just means contrarian. Just whatever it is, just flip it on its head and there you go. Because really I mean, like I think I said earlier, like you're asking about like World War I and stuff. I've actually told my wife Dee over here, I don't think, it's funny you ask that question because I've said in the past, I don't think Dada, I think Dada could only have existed at the time that it did. Now it's, if people are still like woohoo about a banana taped to a wall, like if people are still woohoo about it, I mean, I guess it doesn't die, but is it really as meaningful as when Duchamp did it for the very first time? And I don't think Duchamp was trying to inspire, copycat Eurolists or anything, like it does it, but and so I don't know if we're living in a time where we're that frustrated. I don't know. Maybe I'm just too happy in my life or something. I mean, well, you also have to think of where Europe was before World War I. They were at like kind of the peak of their artistic and cultural thing. I mean, of course, Europe probably got culture, but it was going well until. Actually, I wish I remembered how it works, but in one of the Tristan's Art manifestos, he names 3 things. Panama, the Steinhall affair, and one other thing, I'm forgetting what it is. And when I first read it, and he says that's why World War I happened. I promise if you find that piece of it, and you look those 3 things up, you'll piece together a really actually pretty brilliant theory as to why World War I happened. It was an affair, basically, and money and all this stuff. So it was actually quite plausible. But they were, I don't know. Maybe if things had been different with this prior election, I would have a different feeling.
No, it's a legitimate question, I think, because one of my favorite movies is The Children of Men, and one of the more striking images in Children of Men is a scene where the main character goes to visit one of his patrons or a contemporary that he has, and he walks in and he has Da Vinci's David kind of on a scaffolding, but Da Vinci's David has been dismantled, like it's been falling apart in a sort of dystopic sort of period of time. And it kind of struck me that in a time of great sort of apocalyptic sort of existentialistic dread, to use the term, art would just be rendered meaningless. And a part of me was caught with that idea of, with current sort of protests that directly target art, and that sort of in light of climate change and that sort of thing. And to me, I think I'm kind of wondering if, what does Dada make of those particular things where it's just, you devalue the art to a certain extent, and it's the Mona Lisa. It's sunflowers, fuck, dude. That's not an unimportant piece of art for you just to kind of blindly go in at, but in the light of that lack of meaning, eating meat gets rendered meaningless. So, for me, Dada kind of approached it that way, but I'm kind of wondering if that's just...
I think they're one of the, maybe, I don't want to say the first, but one of the first art movements to want art to mean something beyond just oh, that looks nice. Or something like that. They wanted a message. A lot of Dada art has words in it. A lot of their collages have words all over it, or even sometimes things they painted have words all over them. So it was, like I said, very mixed media type. And I don't even like mixed, I don't even know what to call it, like any kind of art they did it. But to talk about like computers and things, I think that, yeah, they would just co-opted that shit. They might even, yeah. But there's a funny story about what might have ended the Dada movement. One is like what you were asking, like, did they just run out of steam? Yeah, kind of that's what happened. And where do you go after a while? Jackass did a good job, but where do you go after a while? Where do you go after a while? But where is it going with this? But yeah, one story goes that Dada ended in a cafe when one person had on their way to the cafe found a wallet on the ground. And so they were curious to find out what is a Dada supposed to do if they find a lost wallet. And so no one could really agree. And so the guy who found it gave it back. And then it was like, this means nothing anymore. Why are we even doing this? Because I think that's okay. Because you mentioned punk rock. And if you read like secondary sources on Dada, they make that comparison a lot with Dada. Because they did music too. So. Where's it going with that? But anyway, yeah, I lose my train of thought a lot. I'm sorry.
I will remember to come back to that, but we'll kind of go. The other alternative, the other thing I wanted to kind of chat with you about was, with the actual presentation of the art of on the wall and that sort of hanging, and sort of the idea of you kind of are freeing folks to hang it as they wish. Was that in the sort of process of the art show? Like, was that the last frontier that you were aware of when you completed the pieces? Or is that something that you literally had to go, no, dummy, this is important. You need to make this work, or that sort of thing?
As I like turned them around when they were done, like I've had ones that I like, because different angles maybe more than I liked others. But it's funny, other people were like, oh, this way. It's kind of, yeah. The anonymity of it, yeah, is kind of interesting to me. Like, the ultimate answer is you cannot remove yourself entirely. But I tried. There's some forethought, and you kind of go, oh yeah, the colors look good together or something. But it is really just a bunch of nonsense. Chance. A lot of it is. I try to make it as chancy as I can. And when you mention like AI art, like I'm out of a job really. I'm sure AI could easily do this kind of stuff. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like if you, I don't even know how it works anyway, but I'm sure if you like showed them some of my stuff and you were like, do something with it, it would probably make all kinds of cool stuff.
I think that's the interesting.
But I don't know if we have robots that can paste and cut yet.
Do we really? I remember someone saying like AR is just like your dreams. Everyone's really too polite to tell you it actually sucks. And that particular presentation of it. But I think for me, and just sort of the relationship between the two, is just the idea of one, the removal of anonymity, but two, and the reaction of using previous kind of artist data to kind of inform it and having it really imported. So it is perfectly possible if AI as a particular construct works as it does. It's very much got Dada art in the mainframe to kind of pull from.
Yeah.
It's just whether or not you can say, okay, can you make a football team's superhero look like this, but make it Dada. Go!
And then you would just get weird eyes and
yeah, you just get everything super
cut out
the
teeth.
way. Yeah. No, that's part of it too. We're rambling. We know we're rambling. Are there any questions from the crowd real quick? Anything? I'll call out names.
How long does it take you to make a piece?
Yeah.
The watercolors take the longest. I think the one with the over there with the red, yellow, green, brown stuff. That one took I think 5 hours to glue maybe, just to glue it, and then it takes maybe like an hour or two, maybe more to paint the panels.
So the gluing, the construction is the longest.
It takes a long time, yeah. And the gluing is the most. It's that's that funny joke, right? Watching paint dry. Yeah, I did that. I basically did that. And thankfully, where we live, we have lots of these tiny little pots and things, so I could like weight down all the pieces and stuff. I read a lot of books and for things to drive. Yeah, I would say it takes about 8 hours maybe to make one of those. Yeah.
So from beginning to end.
From beginning to end. But you also have to like spray fix it on it so the charcoal doesn't come off. Varnish it so it's brighter and lasts longer. So. The easiest ones to make in terms of like how long it takes for the charcoal ones, I think I said that already. Those two take the least amount of time. However, they're my favorite ones, actually. Those are my favorite. I have other ideas that I've played with those. Those are the ones that I felt worked the best. But I really like them because, I don't know, it's, maybe part of it is that I am kind of drawing. It's the one that I do kind of, I guess pastel ones too, that I do a drawing kind of cut that up. Whereas the watercolor, I guess the closest you could say to it having composition is maybe the shapes that I'm inside the border. But these are really cool. I have lots of ideas. For example, there's a new grammar of ornament over there on the bookshelf. And there's a lot of really cool patterns and different things like that in there. So like, I bought that book recently and I'm like, it's right there. There you go. Yeah, but there's all these kind of cool patterns. That's also why I'm kind of like, I'm not like expecting the world to start going, let's do those or anything, but I am interested like what other people might like come up with, because this is what my brain was able to come up with. I'm actually really curious to see like what other people would do with it. Not that anybody needs to. The challenge is there.
But it's inherent, right? If you don't like our band, you'll start your own.
Yeah, then there you go.
Is there? I'm trying to. The other thing I wanted to talk to you is I mean, the danger part of it. The play part is fun, but the idea of approaching absurdity and nonsense as an active sort of experiment is inherently dangerous because you can remove. Speaking of that existentialistic dread, like you can remove all meaning and then be left with what do I do with this? And it can kind of go from there. So how did you kind of prevent yourself from kind of losing that, or even how do you kind of lower yourself to not get too far out to the, to the waters when it comes to that exploration? Like there's a danger component, like to me, and I think a lot of the time we see that in modern culture with, the folks need meaning, so they're going to look at things that make absolutely no sense to give themselves meaning. I think the rise of QAnon is a really great example of that. But for you in that sort of playful exploration, what were the things that moored you, but what are the things that scared you the most in that process?
The things that scared me the most, well, I'm almost running out of pieces. We've touched on that one before. But just, there was some fear. I mean, there's a lot of like, again, I've done some of these, not necessarily the same colors to experiment and try them out, but there's been ones that just don't look good. Or it's just like, nope. And then now you've spent hours and hours and hours on a nope. And I'm sure that's true for a lot of art, but I think my wife's a ceramicist, so anything can happen sometimes. So I get some art mediums like that, but it's a little different than just what I started with, right? It'd be one thing to paint all those colors, and we'll take marks and things and go, there you go. But cutting it up adds that next element kind of to it. And another thing I guess I never mentioned was, I did mention with the charcoal lines that they seem flat. Not as true maybe with the charcoal pastels, but it is kind of three-dimensional in a way too, which I kind of think is interesting. With the thicker paper, it kind of comes up off the canvas a bit in a way that, I was talking to somebody today about, like how Monet or a Van Gogh, they're three-dimensional. You don't know that necessarily looking. I mean, everybody knows that in here probably. But when you look at a picture in a book, you don't know that there's like a centimeter of ray from that sun popping off the damn thing. So that's kind of an interesting thing about it. I think that's why that has such an optical illusion to it, to where a lot of people don't realize at first that it's a tons of just pieces stuck together. And so one reason I'm curious about removing myself as author is that it does allow the viewers to create whatever it is they see. I play music. I shared a little bit of music with you. I haven't made a lot of music out of it, but I once came up with a chord progression to a guitar, recorded a solo, kind of working solo in a lower register, and then didn't listen to it. Recorded one in a high register, didn't listen to it, put it back together, press play, and your mind starts to create melodies that are not there. your brain starts to go, oh, that note finished this note, but there's actually two guitars. And if you were to ever listen to them on their own, you'd probably not like it. But randomly put them back together and you get sensible nonsense. Your brain can't help it. I don't know if Magic Eye is the right comparison. It's sort of similar. Like you kind of look at it and your eyes do things. Yeah.
Is there, what were you listening to when you were making this? I know that we constantly talk about
I have all the playlists are actually still on my phone. Every day that I did it, I came up with a playlist and it lots of different things. Lots of different things. Some days are like, fuck me. So it's all like drab and stuff. I think that was the name of that playlist, drab or something. So I listen to a lot of different things. Yeah, I think I listen to a lot of jazz thinking beats because these are kind of fun to make before they make it to this one. It's kind of fun to just hit the vine and go all crazy. See what happens.
From the audience, anything?
Do you have any thoughts about your next experiment, data or otherwise?
I do want to self-publish maybe something writing. As a result of finding data manifestos, I like to write manifestos. One thing that I like to do is make what I call fake art manifestos. So art manifestos for movements that aren't real. So I've had a few of those. I've played around with them. I'd love to do more with that sort of a thing because I love writing probably more than I love doing this kind of stuff. I love writing. I've never had a chance to really put a book in a story or anything like that. But that would be kind of cool. I came up with my own kind of manifesto. Thought I was very interested in this guy. I forget his name, but he came up with this stuff called pataphysics. If you ever heard the word metaphysics, meaning what is the theory of reality? Pataphysics are fake systems of metaphysics. So if you want to make it real simple, like any fantasy story has its own pataphysics, the make-believe physics of how maybe magic and Harry Potter works or something, right? So I came up with pataphysics, which are imaginary manifestos. So I'm hoping no one can do something like that. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Kind of like
Yeah. But yeah, manifestos is kind of an aside, I guess, but manifestos are really fun to read. I highly recommend it. This country, all of our lovely murderers have done harm to the word, but there's actually, you should probably get in your book, Travis. This is a cool book. But it's called 100 Artist Manifestos, and it starts off with my favorite art manifesto is actually not a Dada one, it's the Futurist Manifesto, the first Futurist. It's fucking amazing. It's so cool. It's eerie too. They're not good people either, the Futurists. But it's the best. It's the best one. It's my favorite. My favorite manifesto. Love Dada to death. Not really a fan of futurism, but the first Futurist Manifesto was fucking amazing. But anyway, it's 100 Artist Manifesto. It's out by Penguin. And when I was looking, I bet there's more to read of these things. If you go on Amazon, you can get it, but you actually have to order it from either Canada or the UK. They don't print it in America. It's probably because manifestos we associate more with people who shot the place up, right? So it's kind of interesting. Yeah, you can only order. You can get the book, but if you look at the back cover, it'll say Canada, UK, and it's no USA. Interesting. It's fun.
Good?
Yeah.
I know I speak for Jack, and I thank you so much for coming. We want to thank BookShop and everyone for and having us and support your local bookshop like they support artists and writers and makers. It's incredibly important at a time where it's going to be increasingly difficult to know what art was made by people, and knowing the people that make art helps you have that reference point. So, thanks everybody.